I think we can all agree that games are meant to be enjoyed without being stressful, right? Unless the game you're playing is specifically meant to be hard like Super Meat Boy or Dark Souls, you can expect to have a good time. Yet there are moments in video games that will put you under stress so suddenly that it can best be described as your anus squeaking shut. And these moments aren't restricted to just scary moments coming out of nowhere. It also includes moments that will make you tense up and focus because you just know when shit goes wrong, it goes really wrong. So sit back and enjoy my picks for 7 anus clenching moments in video games. Before we get started on the first anal clench of this list, I have to point out that this was initially going to be the Re-Deads and Gibdos from the Legend of Zelda series, and there were several reasons why too. Right. As much as it pains me to drop these guys from the list, there is already an anus clenching moment surrounding a Zelda game. So for now, we can consider these guys an honorable mention. The actual pick for our first anus clencher is in Donkey Kong Country 2. Usually my picks for these lists are for a specific character, but for this entry I'm picking an entire level in Gloomy Gulch, Haunted Hall. This level encompasses everything I dislike in a platformer. Strict timing, unkillable enemies, chase sequences, and in the case of Donkey Kong Country 2, roller coaster levels. Everything about this level screams tension as soon as the level starts. Upon entering Haunted Hall, you're subjected to music that will instantly make you think something is very, very wrong. Then immediately afterward, you're thrown into a cart and taken for a ride. And even people that really enjoy roller coaster levels in DKC2 have to admit that the physics are a bit weird at times, which can result in a cheap death or two. But then we get to the real reason for all of this sudden stress: the cackles. These ghostly skeletons are only found in this level, and for good reason. Upon reaching an area that hosts these ghastly ghouls, a timer starts ticking down while the cackle chasing you becomes more and more tangible. If you can't reach the end of the section before that timer hits 0, the cackle attacks and you will lose a Kong. You can increase the timer count by hitting barrels with a plus sign on them, but keep in mind that there are also minus barrels that will reduce the counter too. So you can easily imagine the panic that starts to set in when that timer is almost at 0 and you start hearing the cackle going. You could imagine the sort of tension that this level can cause. It's all about timing and accuracy, and if you can't do both, an unkillable ghost will get you. But no pressure, right? Outside of horror games, I never understood why unkillable enemies are really a thing, especially when those unkillable enemies are thrown into a platformer. Worse if it's a 3D platformer. It's bad enough when those chase sequences are in 2D games like DKC2, but with an extra dimension to consider, platforming in a rush can lead to disaster without perfect timing. And when timing gets involved, we have to give a nod to the Prince from the Prince of Persia series, as well as the next member of this countdown, the DAHAKA. It's pretty common knowledge that we humans should never screw with time, as we can alter the future in incredible ways. In the case of the Prince of Persia series, if you screw with the flow of time, a giant black monster hunts you down to kill you. So even if you are successful in changing the future, just know that the DAHAKA is coming after you as though the universe hit Ctrl-Alt-Delete. For the Prince, fighting the DAHAKA throughout most of the game is out of the question. All he can do is run like hell while the DAHAKA gives chase. As the player, you have to parkour your way throughout the area in an attempt to get away from the DAHAKA while rock music blares in the background. This sounds fine in theory until you start to realize that platforming and unkillable baddies don't mix well. And with someone as agile as the Prince, finding the right areas to jump to and when while avoiding the monster coming after you can easily lead to mistimed jumps, which will cause any platform lover to start to feel their butt cheeks getting firmer without the need for Kegels. Thankfully, you'll get your revenge on the DAHAKA later on, so at least all that running will have been worth something. But until then, you better treat an encounter with this guy like you're the fresh meat in prison, while the DAHAKA is 6'11" and 300 pounds of pure muscle that thinks you would make a good date. Anyone that has been a long-time viewer of this channel will know that I'm a big fan of Team Fortress 2. You have a colorful cast of memorable characters with their own skill set and customization. There's so much variety that no match is really the same, but any TF2 player can agree that there are people out there that are simply there to be a killjoy. As a sniper main, I am in fact largely responsible for ruining the fun of many a people. I see a heavy making good progress on the bomb cart and I am very quick to ruin his day. I see a rocket jumping soldier, I make sure to yell "pull" as I kill him in midair. Yes, I am a complete bastard of a human being, but you may be happy to know that there is a class in Team Fortress 2 that will make even my anus clench so hard when I know they're around. Spies. A good spy is a threat to any person on an opposing team. You have a guy that can go invisible, disguised as literally anyone in the current game, and can kill someone with a single hit in 99% of cases. How could you not get tense when a spy is around? Thankfully, there are multiple ways to counter a spy, and if you are in fact a spy being countered, well, then you're not a very good spy. A spy is supposed to be able to slip behind enemy lines and take out key defenses, and if you're an engineer or a sniper without a razorback, you're basically a sitting duck. Being a spy isn't just about taking out key targets though, it's about psychological warfare. You would be surprised by the level of panic that occurs when a spy has been seen by an enemy team. They're quick to take action, and if they can't catch the offending spy, I guarantee that they will be on high alert until that spy is found. This also works to the spy's advantage, because taunting an enemy as a spy invokes the same sort of response as backstabbing them without warning. Here's what I mean, and it's something you can all try at home. All you need is a cloak and dagger. The process is simple. As a spy, find an opposing player by himself. From a distance, make sure the enemy can see you, then quickly uncloak and recloak. Find a location closer to your target, then repeat. This will drive your victim insane as though he was playing a Slender game. He can see you, he can hear you, but as long as you're quick, he can't touch you. Being stabbed in the back is bad, but letting your victim know it will happen, but not when, will instill the sort of panic only reserved for someone that's afraid of knife-based colonoscopies. Ever heard of the term mood whiplash? It's something used to describe the moments that cause sudden, conflicting emotions in a very short time period. Like being treated to ice cream by your parents right before they tell you that your dog was hit by a truck while you were at school. Or when you enjoy the serene music of Ghostly Grove only to panic as soon as you enter Haunted Hall. That sort of thing. Minecraft is a master at these sort of moments. The fabulous music that helps inspire the creation of some of the greatest buildings imaginable can just as quickly bring forth a feeling of dread when the music cue for a nearby cave system suddenly rears its ugly head. Sorry to say to anyone that's a fan of Paul Soares Jr., but caves don't really lead to adventure. Instead, they lead to monsters that want to suck your eyeballs out, turn you into a pincushion, or blow you to bits. Like the Creeper. Even if you haven't played Minecraft before, odds are that you're well familiar with the Creeper and the distinct hissing sound it makes right before exploding. It's like a pin being pulled on a grenade. Once you hear it, your ass is moving far away. What makes the Creeper such an anus clencher though, assuming you're not playing on peaceful mode you pansy, is how it shows up at the worst possible time. I could be decked out in full diamond armor with plenty of health, and even then I'll make sure to lock down whatever place I'm in with approximately 20 more torches than necessary just lying around. All it takes is one careless act and complacency for a Creeper to roll up on you while you're crafting an item or looking in a chest. Perhaps it's just paranoia at this point, but if Tobuscus taught me anything, is that a Creeper doesn't need an invite to ruin your day. It'll just show up.
That's what you gonna look. Oh, look at you. You look good. Get out of my pocket. Ah! No! What? No!
What you might not realize about creepers is that they don't make a sound when they walk, and they can climb ladders. That basically makes these monsters stealthy ninja terrorists, with the only thing giving away their position is a noise they make right before exploding. If that doesn't make you want to check your backside often, then remind me to check for your name in the next Darwin Awards.
Oh, my house! My house! Oh no!
It's often agreed upon that special attacks are good if you're the one using them, or bad if they're being used against you. Most games with competing teams either don't tell you when the opposing team is ready to wreck your shit in with a special attack, gloss over it with a brief mention, or the attack itself is scripted and there's no way to avoid it. In any of these cases, you'll be in for a rough time. Overwatch is one of the best games I can think of when it comes to handling special attacks, or ultimates in this case. When an opposing enemy launches their ult to wreak havoc on your team, you hear an unmistakable audio cue from the hero that's using it. Some enemy ults don't invoke much of a response, like Widowmaker's Infrasight or even Winston's Primal Rage, but there are some ults that will make everyone on an opposing team scatter in all directions, like McCree's Deadeye, or for this list, D.Va's Self-Destruct. D.Va's Self-Destruct is one of those abilities that seems to take forever to charge up, but the payoff is well worth it. This ult arguably does the most damage in the game, with only a select few things being able to withstand it. Having a mech that explodes is one thing, but the fact that this ult has a wide range pretty much spells death to anyone that's caught in the open. In an uncomfortable amount of these cases, I find myself right next to a D.Va's ult while futilely trying to run out of the blast zone. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. When you're fighting hard to win a match and you hear the phrase "nerf this," 9 times out of 10 your reaction is going to look like this. Any decent player with an understanding that they're in for a bad time will immediately run for cover upon seeing a self-destructing mech, while praying to God that they don't have a piece of foreskin exposed to the explosion. Remember gentlemen, anime kills, and it looks kyopta while doing it.
They're aiming out!
60 seconds, double Orion.
Form up on the payload. Move it out!
Ever notice how in horror movies the musical score either relies on high-pitched sounds from instruments like the violin and the piano, or there are just long periods of silence? It's a way to build tension in the viewers so they freak out when the actual scary stuff happens. The same thing goes in video games, but the only difference is that games try to engage the player more directly. So anything scary suddenly coming on screen will prompt a sudden flinch followed by an "oh shit" from horror fans, while non-horror fans have just thrown their controller into the TV screen and are already a block and a half away while screaming their asses off. While not a horror game, Breath of the Wild does have a lot of ambience and infrequent piano cues that are reminiscent of horror games. From my own experience with the game, the most common cue is a short series of piano notes that comes right after a period of silence. It's pretty creepy at times. But no piano cue will make your anus clench more tightly than when you're minding your own business and a guardian spots you. The moment when a guardian spots you is probably the most recognizable thing in Breath of the Wild. Between the 6 types of guardians, 4 of them are worth being concerned about at all times, especially the guardian stalker. These enemies have a nasty habit of being in places where you really think they shouldn't be, like being uncomfortably close to Kakariko Village or along the main path up the Death Mountain. With the exception of the Guardian Sentries and the Scouts, every other Guardian behaves in a similar fashion upon seeing Link. That piano cue starts playing, their eye locks onto your position, and within seconds the world around you is going to turn into the deadliest laser light show. If that wasn't bad enough, your very first encounter with a Guardian is at the beginning of the game, and while this fight is avoidable, it will not prepare you for the mayhem of Guardian Stalkers or even Guardian Skywatchers later on. Guardians in general have a huge field of view, and Guardian Stalkers in particular are relentless in chasing Link down. Guardians are an enemy you have to plan for, but unless you're using the Sheikah Slate to detect them nearby, there's a good chance they'll sneak up on you when you're far from ready. All of this gives the player a psychological reaction upon seeing a Guardian. Decayed Guardians are probably the best at abusing this reaction, since an inactive Decayed Guardian looks exactly like a broken Guardian under normal circumstances until you get close to it. Thankfully there are ways to pick out inactive Decayed Guardians from the broken ones, but that won't help much if you're being targeted from all sides.
Oh no.
And that's when the prince realized that when you grab a bull by the horns, sometimes he'll take you for a ride.
Finally, we are going to be taking a look at a moment that makes anyone's anus clench when it happens to them. It doesn't matter how skilled of a player you are or how quickly you can come out on top against other players. There's an item out there in a certain series of games that has helped create a condition where chance can easily affect the outcome of winners and losers. That condition is what we experts call Mario Kart syndrome. And that also leads us to the final moment on this list, getting hit by the blue shell in the Mario Kart series. Officially known as the spiny shell, the blue shell is the most feared and devastating item to anyone holding a lead position in Mario Kart. The blue shell has behaved a little differently between games, but the premise has been the same. The blue shell will fly ahead and, depending on what game you're playing, will hit other players along the way and cause a huge explosion to the person currently leading the race. The explosion itself will kill all momentum in the leading player, which will leave that player vulnerable to other attacks from other racers. A thrown blue shell at the right time can mean the difference between first and second place, which goes to show how insane this item is. In the vast majority of cases, the blue shell can't be avoided. As of Mario Kart 8, only a super horn can safely destroy a blue shell outside of a star power-up or some complicated tricks. In other cases, there are two typical reactions to seeing a blue shell coming towards you. Reaction 1 is to slow down and let the guy in second get ahead so he or she becomes the new target, and reaction 2 is usually to lay on the accelerator and hope to God you get to the finish line before that shell from hell can annihilate you. It also doesn't matter where you are on the track either. If you're in the air or above a pit, the blue shell will just laugh at your misery as you drop from first place to 7th. The blue shell truly is an item of pure evil, and everyone is justified to panic immediately upon seeing it. So that was my pick for 7 anus clenching moments in video games. Are there any moments in video games that either made you panic or tense up to the point where it can only really be described as anus clenching? If so, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Like always, if we get enough responses, I will make a continuation countdown featuring your picks. As for the next review, I got a good suggestion for a game to look at. Only problem is that it's an RPG, and from my experience, I can easily lay down 30 hours or so in playtime. As a result, I'll be looking at my library for the next game to review, but I'll also be playing the suggested game concurrently. With that said, this has been Regnilla, and I will see you all again in the next video. Take care, people.